And I'd like to welcome all of you to Preserving Food Safely. This is our water bath canning session, and we're excited to have you all today. My name is Shelly Barnes, and I'm the Family Consumer Sciences Extension Agent for Wilson County. And I'd like to ask Mary to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Draper, the Family and Consumer Science Extension Agent in Smith County. We're glad to have you all here. We see some that were here last week, so welcome back, and we have some new ones. We're excited to see y'all here today.
Thank you so much, Mary. Now, Mary will be moderating our chat. So, if you're interested in going ahead and asking any questions in chat, she may be able to answer those immediately for you. Otherwise, we might save some of them for our question and answer session later on. So, I want to just kind of recap what we talked about in our last session. Our last session was best practices for home preserved food. And so we talked about a lot of different things, including using safe recipes, choosing quality foods, adding acid to some foods, hot packing and raw packing foods, and then also using two-piece lids and mason top jars and storing home preserved foods. So we're not going to cover those items today. If you're new to our session, we do encourage you to go back to our YouTube channel. We'll have a link to that in the comments as well as the end of the session so that you can review that last week's session to learn more about those best practices. So today we're going to talk about using the water bath canner and water bath canning. So we're going to just dive right in. Our microorganisms of concern for home food preserved foods includes yeast, mold, and bacteria. The most common sources of microorganisms are soil and water. Yeast can grow over a wide range of pH and at refrigeration temperatures. They may produce slimy spoilage, souring or greening, or produce a fruity or yeast odor and or gas formation. Mold also is a spoilage organism, most frequently recognized by fuzzy growth on foods. Bacteria are also microscopic organisms. Bacteria can cause spoilage of meat and seafoods, milk and dairy foods, breads and cereals, and produce. They may or may not produce a gas. They may produce an abnormal odor or cloudy liquid. They can cause cans to swell and burst. We use a water bath canner to destroy these microorganisms so that they do not cause food to spoil and so that they don't make us sick. Acid and acidified foods can be safely canned in a water bath canner. These include jams, jellies, fruits, pickles, and sauces. Meat and vegetables are low acid foods and must be canned in a pressure canner, as well as food mixtures like soups and other things. And so we'll cover information on pressure canning in our next session. The water bath canner is used to process foods at a boiling temperature, which is 212 degrees Fahrenheit at sea level. At this temperature, most harmful microorganisms are destroyed. Foods with enough acid, with a pH of 4.6 or below, such as jams and jellies, fruits, pickles, and sauces, inhibit growth of Clostridium botulism. Now, if you live in a place that is over 1,000 feet above sea level, it's important that you make adjustments in processing time in the water bath canner. As altitude increases, water boils at lower temperatures. The lower temperatures are less effective for killing bacteria, so processing time must be increased. And I know in Wilson County, we do have this issue. Some places in Wilson County are above 1,000 feet above sea level, and so we do have to make changes in some areas. Recipes and So Easy to Preserve and the USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning, as well as the University of Tennessee's Canning Food publication, are for an altitude of 0 to 1,000 feet. Once you determine your altitude, you need to make adjustments. Charts are available in these guides for adjusting times or pressure for higher altitudes. And we'll also share a link for altitude adjustment charts at the end of this presentation, as well as in the chat section. A water bath canner is a large covered cooking pot with a rack. You can use any large metal container as long as you have enough room to cover the jars with at least 1 inch of boiling water with 1 inch of airspace for a brisk boil. The diameter of the bottom of the pan should be no more than 4 inches wider than the diameter of the stove burner. Do not use a large kettle that fits over 2 burners. We're concerned that the jars in the middle may not get enough heat. The canner needs to have a flat bottom for electric ranges, and smooth top stoves may not be designed for the weight of a canner with jars and water. Consumers should check with the manufacturer before canning on a smooth top stove. The canner needs a tight-fitting lid and a rack. The rack keeps the jars from touching the bottom of the canner and allows the water to circulate freely. Now, before you start preparing your food, you'll want to fill the canner half full with clean, hot water. Preheat the water to 140 degrees for raw packed foods and 180 heating. Oh no. Am I muted?
You're back, Shelly.
Okay, how much did y'all miss?
Just that last part.
Okay, so begin by preparing the food for the jars while the water is heating.
Yes, that's good.
Perfect. I don't know what happened. We also need you to begin preparing the food for the jars while the water is heating, like I just said. Pay attention to proper headspace, wiping the rims, and releasing excess air. Load the canner 1 jar into the rack at a time using your jar lifter. And you can see in this photo, it's funny, in a lot of our classes, this jar lifter is kind of foreign to people if they haven't canned before. And so the top where you would hold it is actually straight. A lot of people think that that is actually the part that goes around the jar, but it's not. If you can look in this photo, you can see that the jar lifter is designed to kind of hug the jar. And so you would use it in that way. We want to be sure not to tilt the jars, as this can cause foods to spill into the sealing area of the lid. Now, it is a natural response to pick up that jar, um, especially after it's over, and we're talking about loading the jar. So it's kind of a natural response when you pick up the jar to kind of tilt it a little bit and put it in the canner, but especially when it comes out of the canner, it's a natural response to want to tilt it a little bit to pour that water off. No tilting. We never want to tilt a jar. When they come out of the canner, the jars are hot, the water will evaporate pretty quickly. And so we actually want to make sure that we never tilt the jars. So we want you to add more water as needed, enough to cover jars with 1 to 2 inches of water. Prepare an extra pan of water and keep it heated to add the canner as needed. Set the heat to the highest position and cover the canner and heat until the water boils vigorously. Start timing at this point. If your water ever stops boiling at any time, turn the heat on to its highest setting, bring it back to a vigorous boil, and you'll want to begin timing the process over from the beginning. When the jars have processed for the recommended time, turn off the heat and remove the canner lid. Wait 5 minutes before removing the jars. Using your jar lifter, remove the jars one at a time. Like I said, being careful not to tilt them. Place the jars onto dry towels or a cake cooling rack to prevent them from making contact with the cold surface. That might cause breakage. So we want to make sure that we don't do that. Let them sit undisturbed, away from cold drafts. Don't cover or wrap them in towels. Do not invert them, so don't turn them upside down. And we want to let them sit undisturbed for 12 to 24 hours. I know that this is really hard to do because you know you want to lift it up, you want to inspect it, you want to see how it's going, make sure that everything is in there. You just want to see how pretty it is. We want you to leave it undisturbed for 12 to 24 hours because that way your lids will seal. Now we may say, hey, we've started hearing them pop. That's great. That doesn't mean that the adhesive has had time to really make a good seal, a good connection. So leaving them undisturbed for 12 to 24 hours really gives it time to adhere to the jar. We also don't want you to tighten the ring bands on the lids or push down on the center of the flat metal lid until the jar is completely cooled. I know that that's kind of a natural reaction too in our canning classes is everybody wants to get in there and press down on those lids and see is it really sealed, especially after they've started popping. Resist the urge. Don't do that until 12 to 24 hours. So that's all we have for water bath canning. Now we've got some resources here for you. We always want to make sure that you use tested recipes. Actually, I have a great example of this for you today. I had a client contact me. They wanted to pickle some let's see, what did he say? He wanted to pickle some garlic. Let's see. I think some garlic shoots. Anyway, he said that he had talked to someone who had canned a lot and he had a recipe from them and he just wanted to check with me and make sure that that was a good recipe to use. And I kind of searched around garlic scapes. I kind of checked around to see if we had a tested recipe for that. I didn't think that we did. I couldn't find one. And so I contacted Dr. Janie Burney, who is our food preservation specialist, and she confirmed that Extension does not have any tested recipes for that particular food product. And so her recommendation was to go ahead and pickle that and have it ready to put in the refrigerator. Um, so that way it did not have an issue with botulism. So we're really concerned that people are sometimes not using tested recipes. So we want to give you resources to find those. The So Easy to Preserve book is a great resource to have on hand. I'm sorry, I have my little puppy here and he likes to play in the afternoon, so he's wondering what I'm doing. We also have USDA's Complete Guide to Home Canning. This is a publication that is downloadable from this link here, and Mary's going to add that to the chat section. Our UT Extension Canning Food publication is available for download. Our National Center for Home Food Preservation is from the University of Georgia. And this is actually where our National Test Kitchen is located. And this is a great source. This is what all extension agents use. And so we want to make sure that all of our resources that we give to people are tested and research-based. And so that's where our information generally comes from. And then also we felt like it was important for you to have that altitude adjustment chart. So that's a resource that you can be aware of. Mary's, I don't know if she probably already has added those to the chat. And for all of our friends that have subscribed to YouTube, we will list those in the description as well. So I just want to thank everybody for attending today. In our next session, we'll discuss using the pressure canner. And if you ever have any questions about family consumer sciences with UT Extension or food preservation, you can always contact myself, Shelly Barnes with Wilson County Extension, or Mary Draper with Smith County Extension. I hope you all have a great day.